Technology.
Are we on? We're live.
Yeah, fab. Cool. So yeah, hey Beth, lovely to connect with you. I've got Dina's stream up here. Just thought we'd check in on what she's been up to for a little bit before we get chatting. But I can see there's some. She's been doing a marathon effort. I think how long has she been going for now? Like just over.
It's incredible.
Hours. So
yeah, it's I've been watching it a little bit actually throughout the day, and I've been very impressed with the efficiency of her technique. Look, she's not running at the ball too hard there. Yeah, literally, she's just putting what she needs to put into it to get the job done, which is incredibly sensible, I think.
Yeah, I think conservative. Left foot as well.
Is she right-footed then? Is this it? Is this a new skill that she's managed to acquire through this process as well?
So apparently beforehand she was saying she's only got one shot one particular way. So this is actually really good for her penalty.
So it's actually just really good practice. This is it. She set the whole thing up not only to raise awareness and to do a brilliant thing, but really it's a selfish move to improve her penalty taking.
Practice all the penalties. Good. Well, all right, I'm going to take Dina's live feed off. We'll check in with her later. People can keep watching. But Beth Farrell-Wild, lovely to chat to you from the England Cricket Board. And we're really excited because we obviously have a lot of people coming from the football world, done a lot of world records in football, but we've had this great chance to connect with people from other sports as well. And I think one of the things we've seen is a lot of the challenges that people are facing in football are the same in other sports, but also some of the opportunities. And I think I'm super excited to talk to you about some of the plans that obviously got a bit behind this year, but some of the plans that you've got with cricket and all of the kind of moves that's been happening there. So maybe you could talk a bit about your role at the moment and talk to us about the 100.
What's going on? Yeah, absolutely. So my role, as you said, so I work for the England and Wales Cricket Board. So that's the national governing body for cricket here in England. And I am head of the 100 women's competition and female engagement, which is possibly the longest, most convoluted job title in the organisation. But there's a couple of aspects to it. So the head of the women's comp within the 100 is it's a new role. I mean, well, not so new actually. I've been doing it for a couple of years. So started back in 2018. And the 100 is a brand new city-based competition that was due to launch this summer. Unfortunately, it did fall as a victim to COVID. So those plans have been pushed back to next summer. But it's a brand new city-based competition, exciting new format. So it's 100 balls per team. It's based around 8 cities here. And I think from my perspective, the most exciting element of it is that it has been launched from the start for both men and women. So I think it's one of those things. I've been reflecting a little bit on it today, actually speaking to various people. I think what tends to happen when sort of new competitions are being set up is that, especially in traditional male sports, which cricket is one of, and football is obviously in a similar sort of boat there, it tends to be that something gets set up for the men and then they see how it goes. And then maybe 2 or 3 years later, the women's element gets bolted onto it. And I think from my perspective, it's just super exciting that we're actually designing this competition, this new competition, which is all about throwing cricket's doors open to everybody, trying to encourage more fans, more participants, more people to get involved. And we're starting it, from inception for both men and women, which is just so important in terms of our aspirations of making cricket a gender balanced sport. So, I'm charged with the really exciting task of making sure that the women's element to it sort of gets underway without any issues, and sort of trying to set everything up in the right way. And I think actually just in my role that I've seen over the last couple of years, it's been really really brilliant to see how the organisation's shifted quite a lot of its thinking in terms of just sort of looking at things with that gender balance lens now. So we have a lot of conversations which historically it might be like, oh, well, we'll do it this way for the men and, that'll be fine for the women. It will just work okay. Whereas now, like, somebody will come to me and be like, right, we're looking to do this. Does this work for the women's game? So, a lot has changed in the last couple of years. We've got a lot to look forward to, though. But, unfortunately, things got put on ice this summer with COVID. Nothing seems to be immune from it.
No, well, I think it's something that's worth investing the time in. I think even postponing it out a year is going to have such a massive difference. I was really lucky because I was at the T20 final
cool. Incredible.
The world shut down.
And
I think having these variations on the sport have been really interesting because it just draws in a whole new audience. And I think I mean, I was really taken with the fact that you have particular amount of people within a certain boundary, and then after certain overs you spread out, and it has obviously the kind of playing with the rules and making those variations.
And I think actually it's a really good point. So that's kind of the 100. It's sort of, we've got three sort of key elements around it because it is a new format, and I think cricket as a sport lends itself to innovation quite nicely. So, you know, T20 only came in, I think, probably about 15 years ago or so now, and that was a new format back then, and we've kind of progressed it on here. But it's all about trying to make it more accessible, less complex. So if that was one of your first cricket experiences, it probably was a bit confusing. Like, there's probably lots of different boundary markers, and there's lots of language that is quite inaccessible. So the 100 is all about trying to strip out some of that complexity and make it as simple and easy to understand as possible, so that somebody new to the sport can come in and understand what's going on straight away. So that's a key part of it. But I mean, that women's T20 final in the MCG back in March, I mean, gosh, I remember watching that. I watched it on the telly, and it was just one of those moments that you're like, wow, this is proper, you know. And this is one of those things, 86,000 people in there. And I'll be the first to admit, when Cricket Australia first came out and said that they had this ambition to fill the MCG for that final, I was very lucky actually. Back in 2017, I was working on the ICC Women's World Cup that we had over here. So I was part of the team that delivered the sold out crowd at Lords for that event. And I remember back then, you know, that was 28,500 people. And I remember in the build up to that, lots of people telling us that we were never going to sell it out, and like, oh, just manage your expectations, because if we get 10,000, we'll have done well. And I sort of, had a really good team there. And we were like, no, we're going to sell it out. We're going to do it. And fortunately, you know, we managed to sort of nail that. But I do remember when Cricket Australia came out with this grand statement that they were going to sell out the MCG for the T20 Women's World Cup final in March. I think even then I was a bit like, oof, that's a lot of tickets. That's a lot of tickets. You know, that's 86. Well, a few more than that, 1,000 tickets. And it's like, oh, that's going to be a challenge. But they absolutely smashed it. And I think it just shows how far like women's sport and women's cricket in particular has come in such a short space of time, that we've gone from sort of in the last kind of 5 or 6 years that I've been working in the game, we've gone from being happy with getting 1,000 people in the ground to being like, no, actually, we're going to sell that venue out, and that's going to be our ambition now. And I think, with the 100 next summer, we're sort of pulling together all of our attendance objectives and things at the moment. And we are being ambitious with those, and sort of settling for 2,000 or 3,000 isn't the space we're in anymore. So it's really exciting to see.
That's cool. I was looking at the 100, and so they're formed around these like cities, and you've got I guess like ambassador players that are from those areas. How what's the intention of that? Because obviously cricket's built on the county, so it's like
It's interesting. I mean, gosh, there's some contention around here because cricket is a very traditional sport, and it has a lot of very die-hard core cricket fans who are they're very passionate, and they're passionate about the county game and the men's first-class game in particular, and the hundreds of years of history that's been built on. But these are 8 brand new teams. It gives us a bit of license to do things differently. There will be local players. So we've got sort of the England women's players will be involved, the England men's players will be involved, and then we've also got the opportunity to bring in overseas players. So like my big objective for the women's comp is, I was writing a bit about this today, like my ambition for it is to be the biggest domestic women's sport competition in the world, which is pretty lofty, and there's some pretty fierce competition out there. But I think when I first wrote it down, I was like, I want it to be the biggest women's domestic cricket competition in the world. And I was like, it's not actually very ambitious, because we've got the Women's Big Bash League in Australia, and that's probably our only real competition at the moment. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to take on all the sports, and I'm going to take on the whole world, and we're going to have this 10-year plan to make it as big and as bold and brilliant as it can be. And I think overseas players is a massive part of that. So we're very fortunate that we've been able to attract some of the best female players in the world, which is really exciting. Like, they see it as a really big opportunity for them. And I think actually that's another point, and I appreciate I'm jumping around a little bit here.
Yeah, go ahead.
The opportunities for players to make to make a proper career out of sport now, in terms of earning opportunities. And I think the 100 and the Women's Big Bash League in Australia, so they're 2 examples of domestic women's cricket competitions that actually pay pretty well, and they'll mean that female players can realistically say that I am a professional cricketer. And that is something that has definitely shifted probably in the last 4 or 5 years, and that rate of growth is really exciting. So I think, lots of opportunities, that professionalism element around it, it's very exciting.
So one of the things I was talking with Atlanta from Harlequins Rugby.
Yes, I know Atlanta well,
about the growth of the women's rugby. And I mean, what do you think is making the biggest difference? We touched a bit on sponsors. There's kind of, different things like that. How has cricket gone from sort of you barely read about the players to now being this great competition?
Oh, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? And I think there's lots of elements to it. I think the biggest thing that we need to try and shift the dial on moving forwards is the commercialization of the game. And I think that's something for cricket, like, I guess I'm in a fortunate position where as a national governing body, as ECB, we have a brilliant broadcast partnership and deal with Sky Sports and the BBC over here, which essentially funds our sport. And that's for both the men's and the women's games. And we can kind of build off that. But we still have a very long way to go in that commercialization of the women's game in particular, so that we can be commercially sort of standalone, viable. So that's kind of the next big thing. I think in terms of how we've got to where we've got to, I think it's probably a few things, actually. I think the 2012 Olympics was a big moment for women's sport and the visibility around that. And I think I was cluing up on who you were, Laura, actually, and I saw that you worked on those Olympics, which I'm very jealous of. But I think that was a big moment. I think that was a big moment where people probably, especially in this country, stepped back and said, do you know what, we've got some brilliant female athletes out there. And sort of Jessica Ennis-Hill, or Jessica Ennis as she was at the time, being the poster girl of that Olympics, was huge. So that visibility piece was really important. I think growing from there, we've just had these moments, these kind of big flagship events where we've been able to say, women's sport is brilliant. And we've had Women's Rugby World Cup, the Women's Football World Cup, the FIFA Women's World Cup last year, and some of the incredible sort of broadcast viewing figures that we've had around that, the Cricket World Cups. And I think it's just lots of different things coming together, I suppose. And it just really demonstrates that actually, if you create these moments and you put women's sport on a platform and you make it visible, people will watch it, people are interested. And I think just as a product as well, it's just the standards are improving all the time. So I'm just like, the Women's Big Bash League in Australia is happening at the moment. So my social media feeds are just full of incredible catches and incredible run-outs and, massive sixes. And people will stop and look at that and be like, do you know what, that's really good. That standard is great. And that'll mean that they'll want to go back and watch it more. So it's kind of this kind of perpetual cycle, isn't it? That you need the investment to be able to allow the athletes to train, to get them better, to put on a better product, that then creates more investment opportunities and all of those things. So I think it's probably lots of different things coming together. But I think, the media, massive role in terms of that visibility. But I think investment internally as well. So like, I know I can only really speak on behalf of the ECB, but we are absolutely committed to our ambitions around the women and girls game now. And that might not have been the case sort of 5-10 years ago. And I think sort of I got asked a little bit around this when sort of the pandemic was taking hold in the summer, and sort of saying, look, are you worried about where the women's game is and what's going to happen? And there's a lot in the press, wasn't there, about the lost summer of women's sport and can women's sport really recover momentum and all of these things. And I was like, do you know what, actually, I'm feeling fairly confident. I'm feeling like we are in a place now where at a senior leadership level, Tom Harrison, our chief executive, Ian Watmore, our chair, our previous chair, Colin Graves, like, they believe in it and they can see the potential of it. And it's not just that it's the right thing to do anymore as well. I think people have woken up to the fact that commercially it's a significant area of growth potential, and that it's actually worth investing in, because, that return on investment, it might take a little while, but it is there and it's tangible and it's real. And it's just been so heartening. Like, I read a lot, as I'm sure you do, about other things going on in different sports. And I read somewhere about how the Man United, when they signed, I can't remember the player's name now, but is it Tobin? Right? Yeah. And her shirt sales outsold any other male player that week or something, which is incredible, isn't it? And it just shows. And I think when Alex Morgan, isn't it, signed for Spurs, and exactly. And she, with her Instagram following, she has more followers than the Spurs Instagram account. So it just shows like the power that actually that the women's game and women's sport can bring. So I think there's I've not really answered your question there, I've just gone off on one, but there's just lots of stuff that's kind of coming together at the right time, that we're just riding this wave of momentum. And all the chat about will COVID halt that momentum, I'm actually feeling like we're okay. We're in a good place, that we can kick on, and that we're not going back to square one. And I think if it had happened 5 years ago, I'd have been worried. I'd have been, I wouldn't have been so sure. Whereas now I think definitely for cricket, we are absolutely committed to what we're doing for the women and girls game. So I'm optimistic about the future for sure.
I think one of the things you touched on are these major events. So even things like the Women's Euros, which have now been pushed out a year, but actually it's not going to make a huge difference. If anything, it's going to strengthen the game. And so I think it's a combination of being able to host incredible events, but also the British, and English leagues are kind of sweeping the floor with other leagues, because everyone wants to play here. So whether it's football, rugby, Lance was talking about all the international players, cricket, you've got these international players coming. That actually becoming a really attractive proposition, and everyone else is starting to raise their game because they've suddenly realized, oh, actually, maybe we should be giving our teams professional contracts. Can we give them all the support, the physios, the mental support, nutritionists, things that make the big difference to competing just as a player, but then competing at this higher level. And it's been fascinating to watch in Australia with Australian rules football, because they turned professional about 4 years ago. And they stole a bunch of players from other codes, and so the other codes had to respond, because the offer that these ladies are getting to play professionally and dedicate their time full time to being athletes from Aussie rules now becomes a reality. And so it's caused everyone else to kind of
try and catch up and lift their game. It's a really interesting point, that, actually, because I've been talking to a few people about that, and around like stealing players from other sports. And that's not meant to sound like a kind of a nasty thing to do, but it's almost like, as an offer as a sport, like we want, I'm going to be very open, we want women's cricket to be the sport of choice for a sporty young girl out there. We want, that young 8-9-year-old to see that they can have a career opportunity in cricket, and to sort of pick up a bat and ball, play, fall in love, and earn the cash to do so. And it's kind of it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like we're all in it together as women's sport, aren't we? And we're all kind of like trying to build and cross-sport collaborations, and what can we learn from each other. But there is, I'm very competitive. So there is a tiny bit of me that's just like, we need to be better than football. And it's funny, I have a few sort of, Kelly Simmons, who's director of professional women's game at the FA. We've had a couple of catch-ups recently, and I've kind of cursed her on a couple of things that they've done. And I'm just we need to catch up again. And it's what you said there. It's kind of like, they're setting the standard, and they're driving that standard. And we were like, okay, no, it's not actually okay for us just to do that, because look what they're doing over there, and we need to keep pace with that. So, I think it's good to drive that forwards.
So interestingly, you were an elite player both at cricket and in hockey. So you have this kind of
Googling. Sorry, what was that?
Being how did you manage to play both at the same time, which is nuts, and then how did you get into it, and then how did you end up with cricket taking over your life?
Good questions. So I suppose I was always very sporty at primary school. So I was a bit of a tomboy, kind of threw myself into all the sports. I actually started off playing football, just because that was the sport that was played at school. But then classic, like I couldn't play in the boys team, sort of at our local village team, like they wouldn't let any girls play. So my mum used to play hockey. So she was like, well, look, Beth, why don't we just take you down to the local hockey club and you can get involved there? So I went and got involved there and absolutely loved it. And then cricket, like very fortunate. So I've actually just moved house recently. So apologies for the chaos in the background here. It's not all moved in yet. But we were a brilliant local village club. So I've just moved back to the village I grew up in. And they came and did some primary school sessions and encouraged me to go along to the club on a Sunday. And again, just absolutely loved it. And I was very fortunate, played in the boys teams all the way through. So from sort of under 10s, under 11s, all the way through to playing in the adult men's teams on a Sunday, to the extent where I was talking to some friends about this the other day. And it's almost a bit funny, isn't it? And I didn't think it was funny at all at the time. But, it's like a 14-year-old girl going off on a Sunday afternoon to play men's third 11 cricket in some random village in the middle of Essex somewhere, and just didn't think anything of it. I was just a completely normal thing to do, isn't it? Hang out with these 22 old men, and like they would be old men as well. It's proper village men's cricket. But all of the things that went with that in terms of sort of being a girl, getting changed in the ladies' loos because they didn't have the facilities to be able to, for me to have my own changing facilities, etc. Again, didn't really think anything of it at the time. Fortunately, that is changing now, and that is a big part of our strategy in terms of trying to make cricket a welcome. Well, yeah, genuinely, we have a whole pillar attributed within our Transform Women and Girls Action Plan around facilities and making sure facilities are welcoming, because even little things, so just putting mirrors up in toilets, and so I've got a young family, having baby change facilities within the clubhouse so that you are encouraging families to come down to your facilities. So that's another thing. But in terms of sort of, balancing hockey and cricket, I guess that I was just very, very lucky that I had the opportunity to play both, kind of manage my time. Fortunately, the seasons didn't clash. So I played cricket in the summer, hockey in the winter. As things got a little bit more serious, like those did start to overlap a little bit when there were tours, etc. And it's probably when I think I was 17, because I was playing England 16s and 18s hockey and
we still got you, hopefully.
20, I had to make the decision, and I went with cricket. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
I can see myself now. Sorry, this is another thing. Just moved house, so I haven't got proper Wi-Fi yet, so I'm hotspotting off my phone. But yeah, look, I mean, I plumped with going with cricket because I was further down the pathway at the time, and there was a more obvious career path, I suppose, in terms of that I could see that professional journey a little bit more obviously. But yeah, ultimately, it all juggling the two was fine. That was just, there's lots of doing homework in cars on the way to matches and things like that. I remember doing all my A-level coursework, my A-level chemistry coursework, in cars on the way to fixtures, etc. But no, happy memories, really. But yeah, no, it's great. Like, and I think I've got kids now, and I think like sport is just one of those brilliant life things that I'll definitely encourage them towards. Like I said, I think that's those kind of Sunday afternoons in the men's third 11 when I was 13, 14, and just like what I'll have learned without even realizing what I'm learning in those environments and sort of socially mixing and all of those things. So yeah, I'll definitely be encouraging them to hopefully get involved in sport. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do if they decide that they want to be music and drama based. I suppose I'm just going to have to encourage that, aren't I? And just throw myself into it. But hopefully they'll go down a similar path.
I'm sure you've got a high chance. One of the things you were touching on there, and I spotted with a lot of the cricket work, is around role models. So maybe you can talk a bit about some of the initiatives, because I know there's been a lot to really make female cricketers visible.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's lots of research out there, isn't there, around sort of the phrases "you can't be what you can't see," and making sure that our female players are presented as sort of widely as the men. And I think, and again, I'll go back to the 100. That's one of the really core things that we're looking to do. So whenever we do any piece of marketing, so whether that be a tweet or an Instagram post or something to do with one of the matches, any sort of video, we will always make sure that there's a female player and a male player alongside each other. So it's just really normalising the fact that, for Southern Brave, you've got Jofra Archer and Anya Shrubsole, and they both play in the same kit, and they play for the same team, and just really normalising that. And I think that's something that, we're just very aware of. I think England women, in particular, over the last kind of 5-10 years, the profile of that team's really grown. I think winning the World Cup in 2017 on home soil, seeing the sort of pictures on the front pages of the newspapers, etc. It just normalizes it, and it just makes it just a really sort of natural thing for girls to want to play cricket, which I sort of, when I was growing up, I sort of tell the story like I wanted to be Mike Atherton, who was the England men's test team captain at the time, and because I didn't even realise that there was a women's team. So so much so, actually, when I've been sort of moving house and sorting through some old stuff, I found a sketch that I'd done when I was probably about 10 years old of Mike Atherton, which is a little bit cringe now because I've met Athers a few times now on various sort of work-related things, and I'm not sure he understands quite how obsessed I was with him, so much so that I had a sketch of him on my bedroom wall. But but yeah, that just shows again how far the women's game has come, that hopefully young girls now will be able to say, no, look, my favourite player is Heather Knight, or my favourite player is Danny Wyatt. And I think one of the massive things that we're very fortunate with our broadcast partners, so we have Sky and we also have the BBC on board now, is the reach and the visibility that gives us. And I think especially the BBC and that free-to-air platform and that massive platform, and you see the viewing figures, like they just, they're incredible, and sort of the power that has just to sort of, to showcase women's sport is massive.
Yeah, I was listening to Barbara Slater from the BBC talking about this, and her sort of driving strategy of just like, well, we're going to put women's sport front and center, and we'll see if people come. And but kind of knowing that they would. And so she was sort of like, well, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. We thought they might, and they did.
And they did, yeah.
I think one of the fascinating things she was talking about is that actually the audience for women's sport is actually predominantly male. So if you enjoy sport, you enjoy sport, and it doesn't matter what the sport is. You just want to watch your teams really take part.
Exactly. And I think that's something actually that I've noticed. So I think Manchester City do it brilliantly in sort of the football world, in terms of how they've really positioned their women's team and their men's team alongside each other. And I've actually taken a lot of learnings from what they've done, especially on their social channels, which we're trying to now feed into the stuff that we're doing on the 100. I think that audience demographic piece is really interesting though, isn't it? Because I think there's an element that it kind of fills me with sort of, kind of joy, that it's like, actually it is just sport. It's men's sport and women's sport, but it is just sport, and you can enjoy both. I think we have a challenge on our hands to try and widen that demographic. So I think that's something that definitely through the 100 that we're looking to do, is try to appeal to perhaps a slightly younger, more diverse female audience. And I think a lot of the innovation that we're trying to do in terms of not trying to make it more simple, that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make it through the format more fast-paced, sort of more exciting, those real kind of key pressure moments. So if you think back to the Men's Cricket World Cup in 2019, it went to that super over, and that's what the whole nation got behind. And it's just trying to recreate those moments. And I think sort of having a shorter format helps us to do that. So the audience profiling, it is really, it's a fascinating one actually. And how do you attract a more female audience? Because ultimately we want as many people as possible watching our sport. So how do we broaden that demographic?
Yeah, it's interesting. You definitely need to get the FOMO factor. So my mum doesn't particularly watch sport. At the Women's World Cup last year, tuned in of her own volition.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's breaking through to people as well, just because it's such, like you say, it's those big moments that people really care about. Yeah.
So nothing that you've been sort of wanging on about then, Laura, for the last however many years. Like it just took a major global event moment.
Just sitting with knitting, watching the World Cup, which is perhaps the classic demographic of sport watchers these days. It's quite funny. What I was going to ask you, so Dina's obviously got her penalties. That's quite a big pressure moment in football. What's it like in cricket with you? Because it's almost a big pressure moment at every ball. In some ways. How do you deal with the player, and then how have you seen other players avoid it as well?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think actually, every ball counts is kind of one of our marketing taglines, actually, in terms of those kind of high pressure moments. I don't know. I mean, I suppose talking to some of the players, like, so back in 2017, when England women won the World Cup at Lords, that was a very close game, very exciting game. And I think Anya Shrubsole was the hero on the day there. And I've listened to her do a couple of interviews about the over that she bowled, where I think she took 2 wickets in an over to help us win that match when we looked like we were completely gone. And I think she just talks about just sort of really honing in on sort of the process and knowing that she'd put the work in, and that she knew exactly what ball she was going to deliver. And she was talking about within that over, a catch went up, and Jenny Gunn, unfortunately, because she hates it because this is how people always remember it, but she drops that catch. It was a really easy catch, and she dropped that catch in the moment. And there's probably a pressure element to that because she's a brilliant fielder, and she'd take that catch 99 times out of 100. But Anya's response, it wasn't one to panic and be like, oh gosh, well that's it, she struck the World Cup, we're gone. She's just like, you can see her, and if you watch the footage back now, she's just like, just calm down everyone, just calm down, I've got this, I know what I'm doing, I've practiced this, like I've visualized this like my whole life. I'm just going to bowl her. I'm just going to bowl her next ball. Don't worry about it. I've totally got it. And then, yeah, like literally 2 balls later, she bowled the batsman. And so I think it's just kind of put in the sort of being able to have that ability to really block out everything that's around you. And look, if I'm brutally honest, maybe that's why I didn't quite make it to that top space. So like I played junior international sports, so I played to a decent standard, never quite made it to that next level up. And I think the psychology of the game is huge. And I think actually I look at it now and I look at sort of, you know, I'm 33 now. So I look at whether I'd want to be 15 years younger and sort of going through everything now and the opportunities that there are in terms of the infrastructure and the science and medicine support and the psychology support and all of those things, because they didn't really exist when I was playing. So I wonder whether some of those bits of support would have helped. I'm not sure, but I guess I have the same thrill, don't I, when I'm doing presentations in front of lots of people and sort of being able to deal with that. I don't know, not quite the same as playing in the World Cup final, but
I think the impact that you've been able to make on the sport has been incredible, though, and perhaps wouldn't have been the same if you'd have had an international career. That it wouldn't have led you down this path, and
possibly,
seeing the bigger picture.
Hopefully that's a very kind thing to say. But yeah, look, I mean, I'm very, very lucky. Like on a daily basis, I absolutely love my job. And I feel like for me, having been so purpose led in what I do and really believing in what I'm doing and how it's making a difference is what really drives me. And, you know, I do get very frustrated. Like I had a call with my boss earlier where I got quite cross because we were making some decisions, which I was like, they're just not the way we should be making our decisions. We've gone back to old habits of prioritizing the men's, like not necessarily the men's 100 competition, but a different competition. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. We're not doing this the right way. And, you know, it's kind of being in a position, I suppose, to make those challenges. And the fact that I do care so much means that, yeah, I do kick and scream quite a lot about bits and pieces. But yeah, my boss, Sanj, he's a pretty good listener. He seems to take most things on board. So yeah, maybe I'll send him the link to this so he can follow
He knows
through.
what's the heat at the moment and then what's like your hard line of like, no, we've got to change this.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's it. And I think there's an element, isn't there? Like you want to change the world all at once and there's a million things that you want to do. But that's probably actually an area that I've really matured in recently is like being able to identify when to kick off and when to just let things go. Because actually, you know, there are some big things that can make a big difference and there are some little things that can make a big difference. And it's just, yeah, being able to identify when to kick and scream and when to be like, actually, do you know what, that's not dreadful. Like that's not a gender decision. That's just a bad decision. Yeah, literally. So yeah, I'm definitely learning in that space.
So final question for now. Are you still playing sport? Do you get a chance to play cricket still with your busy schedule? Or what are you enjoying at the moment?
What am I enjoying? Well, so I've been a bit of a nightmare actually with this whole COVID thing. So my normal kind of fitness regime. So I do like to keep very active. So I probably don't play hockey or cricket as much as I'd like to. Sort of family, etc. It takes a lot of time and training. And actually one thing I don't miss is having to go to hockey training on a Wednesday night when it's pissing it down with rain and it's like -2 or something. So I definitely don't miss that. I do miss the camaraderie of team element. Like I really miss the structure of a Saturday and being at the club and being a part of that environment. But no, so what do I do now? So I'd be a frequent gym goer and have my routines sort of prior to COVID, sort of making the world turn on its head. And then with lockdown, everything changed, didn't it? So my whole regime changed. So I started doing a lot of Joe Wicks HIIT workouts because I couldn't get to the gym. And ever since, and I also started running a lot more, actually, I upped my mileage and I've been injured ever since. So I've had severe Achilles tendonitis at the start of lockdown because basically I started doing a lot more running in it's classic, really bad footwear, sort of bad old trainers. Just did too much too soon, nightmare. And then, from there, all the HIIT workouts, and I've actually this is really boring, but I've actually been to see a specialist about my wrist yesterday to get a steroid injection in there because I got bad tendonitis in my wrist from doing too many press ups. I'm a wreck. I'm a 33-year-old broken wreck that whenever I try to do it,
take it easy so you can get back into cricket for next year.
Well, this is it. Yeah, I probably need to have a few weeks off or something. I don't know, but I reckon with sort of with the family, I'm really excited about that next phase actually, of being not the pushy parent, but just the parent that can help to make a difference in a club and that can help with the coaching. And I think we talked a little bit about female role models. I think that's so important that we improve our visibility of women in coaching positions, because there just aren't enough female coaches. So that's another thing I want to tackle at some point. Yeah, literally that is on the to-do list. But yeah, I can't wait for that period. And it might not be that I'm actively playing, but if I can be involved in a sort of coaching capacity and hopefully inspiring a few kids to play along the way, then I'll be happy with that.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Beth. It's been such a pleasure to chat to you. And
thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Keep doing what you're doing. We're looking forward to the 100 next year. And maybe we can do some cricket world records.
That'd be great. I've been checking out the Equal Playing Fields website a lot today, actually, and I think we have a lot of shared goals and ambitions and stuff. So yeah, let's try and get a cricket world record as your next one.
Let's do it. Awesome. Have a great evening.
All right. Cheers, Laura. Thanks, then. Bye.
Bye. Awesome. And luckily, right now, we have got two really awesome people coming up. So first of all, I'm going to add this wonderful lady. Congratulations, my dear. Well done.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much. I can't believe it.
How are you feeling?
I am.
Yeah, you're just smashing the record.
Yeah, honestly, we've had our chats. I mean, I said 4,000, obviously jokingly at the start, thinking, is that realistic? No, it's not. And I'm on 4,500, so I cannot believe it. Feeling wise, I spent the last 4 rounds doing all left foot, so I'm trying to even out the pain.
I've seen you on your left leg quite a lot now.
I've literally done 4 rounds with my left, which has been good for my left foot. But in all honesty, I'm absolutely buzzing, to be fair, and hopefully I can continue. I'm probably
you're over 12 hours
to get through the next few hours. I want to obviously get there. Yeah, exactly. So I'm over 12 hours now. So I'm just going to aim to probably be consistent, do 200-ish. If I can do a few more, then great. But that's my targets now. And hopefully that will pull me through to the morning.
Epic. And I've got on the line as well one of your former teammates, I guess. We're Stacey.
A blast on the past, a very good blast on the past.
Are you all right? How are you doing?
Stacey, how are you, mate? You absolutely.
I'm all right, thank you. You must be absolutely knackered.
I am, I'm not going to lie, I am. But I've still got a long way to go. So mentally, I've just got to keep it going. So as I just said, I'm going to probably have to slow down a bit to get through it. Yeah. But obviously, I've smashed the record now. So now,
I know, it's
bonus,
amazing.
Really.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Crazy.
I was pretty impressed. We lost you for a bit, but I was impressed when we tuned in after 4 hours and you'd already got to 700. We're like, wow, she's going for it.
I know, right? I beat I actually beat the record within my 3-hour slot. So I was like, oh my God, this is class. And then it's just gone on from there. So it's been brilliant.
How's your support crew? They seem to be doing a really good job.
Honestly, all the goalies have turned up so far, which is amazing because I've got changes every hour. My witnesses have been amazing. The camera crew obviously getting through their evidence. So I'm hoping we're going to be all good for all of that in the morning. And then all my little techers kids have been down. I've got a few banners and stuff. So I'm just I'm loving it. It's really cool.
It looks epic. It's quite mesmerizing. I've been watching the feed quite a lot today and just watching you stand there and just kick penalties. It's really relaxing for us anyway. Maybe not for you.
Not for me. It's got to that stage now where everything's a pure effort. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, it is relentless, but it's fun at the same time. So I am enjoying it. Really enjoyed it.
So when did you two play together?
So we played together in England under 18. So quite a while
Millions of
ago,
years ago.
Stace? Yeah,
We're really
so
old.
back in the day. Yeah, exactly. So we played together in the under 18s, which was amazing. Stacey was just an epic player. And like she's into boxing, I was not surprised. Like if anyone was gonna be a boxer, it was Stacey. But like seriously, it was amazing playing with her, and we had a great time. We went to a couple of European championships and stuff, so it was just epic times, really. And then after that, obviously, I travelled and stuff, and Stacey's now a boxing legend. So yeah, that's how it all began.
It's brilliant to see, well, like what, you know, that team that we were part of. It's just so good to see what everyone's gone on to do. Obviously, some have made an incredible career out of football. I mean, the likes of Casey Stoney now, she's doing an incredible job running Man United Women, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at Katie Chapman and Farrah Williams and Rachel Unit, and I mean, the list goes, Alex Scott. Like, it's unbelievable what they're doing both on the pitch and, like Dina, off the pitch as well. And there's something special about that generation, and I hope it continues, that we're not all happy just to have done our own thing. We want to put that ladder under the window, so to speak, to let other girls and boys, for that matter, climb up as well. And I think the majority of that generation are doing that, and it's just a brilliant thing to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, as you say, there's players from our generation that we played with, and yeah, they're just doing amazing things. And yeah, I've seen some gone into coaching. Obviously, Alex on the TV and everything, which is brilliant. As a magnificent role at Man U. And then yeah, like Katie Chapman, players like that, obviously went on to play a massive part in the England seniors and everything as well. So it is a special generation, and hopefully we, as a team, we're inspiring the next generation, and I think we are definitely a group that are doing that for sure. So it's really, really good. Right, guys, can I leave you to it, because I need to crack on with my next. I'll leave you
cool.
to chat,
Look,
right?
it's a real privilege to be part of it, and I'm dead chuffed we've connected for such a positive reason. So we're following you, and good luck.
I'll be in touch after this for sure.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Thank you so much, Stacey, and I'll be in touch.
Maybe
Yeah,
there'll be a boxing challenge.
Brilliant.
You never know.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Good luck, mate.
I'll leave you to chatting. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Yeah, right. Bye. Awesome. Hey, Stacey. Thank you so much for chatting. Yeah, really good. We thought we could make the stars align and get Dina on the phone at the same time. It'd be awesome. Absolutely. But it seems like she's doing a cracking job, which is
definitely.
I expect nothing less, to be honest. We were talking earlier that Dina's like, she did 100K just because, and like has this kind of mental fortitude that will just see her through. So none of us were worried that she'd smash it. I think we're impressed that she's smashing it so much. That's
absolutely. Yeah,
it's seriously awesome. Well, it's a real pleasure to chat to you. A pro footballer and a pro boxer. Just amazing to be elite level of two sports, which is amazing. And I was watching some of your TED Talks earlier, which is really cool, and just a lot of the work you've been doing to inspire people. So I'm super keen to hear, I mean, how did you end up doing both sports at such a high level? What got you here?
So I actually started off in boxing, and my dad was a boxer. My granddad ran our boxing gym. So from being a little kid, I was in the boxing gym, and I just absolutely loved it. And I got to the age of roughly 11 when you can usually start boxing. You can have like skills bouts, which is where there's no decision, like no winner or loser, you can practice kind of thing. And yeah, I was the only girl in the gym, and the only girl in boxing at the time, I think. And I just did everything that the boys did. So when we went to ask about, starting to fight, I just assumed I'd be able to. And when I went along and I was like, right, I'm ready. And my granddad was like, you can't box. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, it's illegal for females. And that was the first time I was aware that it was illegal. And I couldn't believe it. How can it be illegal for me to do a sport that I love? It just was bizarre. And then round about that time, there were more and more opportunities coming about for girls in football. And so I ended up going into that because that was my other great passion and love. And, you know, obviously I don't regret that because I had some incredible experiences, as we've just talked about with Dina. But I think once I'd done everything I wanted to do in football, which included, you know, playing in the FA Cup, representing England and certainly playing abroad, went on an American scholarship and played in Sweden and stuff. After that, then I'd just never lost that hunger and desire to, you know, pursue my dreams in boxing. And it just felt like the right time. And again, I'm so glad that I did that as well. So I've had 10 years now at, you know, in boxing, and it helped. Obviously, I'd always done it, but transitioning to competing was different. But yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to have been able to do both.
That's incredible. What is it about boxing that attracted you? What is that fire inside?
I think, you know, having got into it as a kid, it's a little bit different when you're a kid because I think whatever sport you get into, and I truly believe I'd have done whatever sport I was introduced to. I think it was just a matter of the influences around me, where I lived, whatever, you know, determines the sports available to you. I'd have got into something. And I think the key thing for me as a kid was, you know, a group of friends, which were all lads at the time, but they were all my mates. It was part of the social circle. I really liked the personal challenge of it. I was a very driven, competitive kid from early on, and I needed that. And then boxing gave me that. Even without having fights, it was competitive. We were always all doing circuits against each other and sparring, and, you know, there was a competitive element. So I think I always enjoyed that. As I've got older, obviously it's slightly different, but definitely some of the things that run through it is being part of a team, in a different way to football, of course, because the competitive bit is done individually, but the build-up and everything around it is very much part of a team in boxing. So I still enjoy that. Without a doubt, the personal challenge of you really, really get to know about yourself and challenge yourself and push your limits in every way, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. Preparing for a fight is like nothing else. And I enjoy that bit of it. So I think there's elements that are the same as an adult that what I really fell in love with as a child.
No, that's awesome. I think what I find fascinating about boxing is you can be, it's kind of, like you're saying, this preparing for a fight that it builds up. You can do all the training you like, but on the nights, or it really is down to you in the ring, and you do have this support crew around you, but it's about how you perform. And is that training going to take you through to the fight?
You're against your own mind because it's your brain's job to protect you. That's one of the main functions of the brain. And part of protection is, you know, you don't want to lose. So your brain's like, let's not risk losing in a very humiliating way in front of everyone we know. Plus, there's the element of, you know, your brain isn't supposed to say, great idea, let's get in and fight with another human being who's highly trained and really wants to hit you. And there's, you know, there's all those fears of performing in front of people, as it might be even with public speaking, the fear of losing, the fear, you know, your brain isn't supposed to encourage you to do that. So you kind of have to overcome your intrinsic protective nature, and that's part of the skill of mentally being prepared, I suppose. So it's good because a lot of it applies to other aspects of life, as does, you know, all sports. So that's one thing that we're privileged to have, I guess, as athletes.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a fight where it's perhaps not going your way, and then you've been able to kind of switch it around? What did you do?
Yeah, and I think there are times in fights when, so I'll give you a couple of examples. There's ones where I've known no matter what I do, I'm not going to win. So when I was in the first round of the World Championships, there was a Azerbaijani that I boxed, Vystrapova, who was just incredible. She beat me in the European final a few months before, but she was much better at the World Championships months later. And everything I did, it was as if she already knew what I was going to do. I mean, she was steps ahead, and nothing was working. And I knew it was just a matter of not heart or endeavour or anything like that. She was just much, much better than I was, and far more experienced. It was like my 22nd fight or something. It was her 170 fights. You know, she'd been an Olympian, she'd been a world champion several times, totally different league. And there's kind of something that happens in your brain there where you have to decide, do I just survive it, or do I give it absolutely everything? And those are the questions that you find out about. Likewise, there are fights that are balanced very finely, 50-50, or maybe you're just edging it and your lungs are screaming, your muscles are screaming, your body doesn't think it can get through those last few rounds. And again, there's that choice, that switch in your brain to say, just tuck up, just get through it, survive the fight, or to say, no, I've got to find that extra bit and win these next few rounds to either maintain the lead or to, you know, get the victory. And, you know, that's when you find out about yourself. And thankfully, I've never come out of the ring feeling I haven't given everything. And I'm lucky in that way, because I think that must be an awful feeling if you haven't.
Yeah, if you don't want to live with regrets about your, like, whether you could have pushed it even further.
Yeah, and usually it is in your mind. I mean, obviously there's sometimes when physically your body just can't do any more. Athletes experience that sometimes, but there's still, I think usually it's down to your mind and overriding your body's automatic response to say, you know, blood sugars are low, we're feeling a bit sick, the lactic acid's building up, stop. Again, it's your brain's job to protect you and say, okay, we need to stop here or just survive. And your brain's got to say, no, we've got a bit more in us yet. And I think every athlete at the top level has to face that at some point and overcome it if you're going to win.
How do you train your brain for these situations?
I think a couple of elements. I think one, it's training your body for it. But in order to train your body to get to those depths, that takes mental commitment. And like when I was training for the Commonwealth title fight in Zimbabwe, we did the last few sessions in a climate chamber. So we had altitude and temperature and all of that. And there were some of the, you know, most demanding sessions of my whole life. I mean, I was I left everything in that room, but I went in with that mentality to think, however hard this gets, I have got to push through it. And there were many, many sessions building up to fights where I would think it was maybe at round 6 of 12. And I'd think, how am I only halfway? This is not possible. But then you say, there's a little voice that comes back in and is greater than the other one and says, yes, it is. You can do this. You've just got to keep going. You've just take a round at a time. Just keep going. Just breathe. Go again. But simple things that push you. And I think once you've done that a few times, then you can draw on that and you know you've done it. And so when it comes to fight time, your mind has got that confidence in your body because your mind's pushed you through that before. If you haven't done that, I'm not sure it's there to draw on. But then I've never gone into a fight not fully prepared. I imagine that's horrendous, but I've never done it. So I've always felt ready.
Yeah, get yourself in good both physical and mental shape. No, it's awesome. Before we go on to football, I want to talk a bit more about your boxing and kind of what's next, and how's COVID affected the boxing scene?
Do you know, I think from an amateur boxing point of view, it's been really, really tough on amateur fighters because there's been no boxing and there won't be for a while. So I think that's been very, very, very tough on amateur boxers. The elite amateurs, they're doing all right because they're back in at the EIS. So they're like the Olympic podium squad. So, and they'll have competitions coming up and so on. So I think it's obviously been a lot better for them. In terms of professional boxing, and for the boxers who are still on the small hall shows, so those ones that happen locally, there's been nothing. So it's been really, really hard for them.
Yeah.
For the top level pros, obviously, there's been opportunities for them. For women specifically in the pros, it's been a brilliant thing because, and I saw somebody write on Twitter when they were saying, you know, what a boom women's boxing's had this summer and how brilliant it's going. And somebody said, yeah, just because there's, you know, no tickets being sold. And I thought, well, yeah, now that we haven't got that barrier, and now people haven't had a reason not to put it on, and not to have a triple headlining world title fight for women because we're not relying on money. And there's been that platform. Suddenly it's like, oh, they are good. And this is the thing, isn't it? That often it's just about taking away those barriers. And for me, there's never been a chicken or the egg thing. Like I used to hear loads of say, I can't put women's football on TV until this, until that, until the other. No, you have to put it out there. And then the investment comes and then we can improve the quality and then we draw more people into it and sponsorship comes in, et cetera, et cetera. Same with boxing. The talent is there. it just needs that platform, and it's getting it now. And so in some ways, COVID's been helpful to the development of the game and at least getting that exposure out there.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the WNBA and how actually bringing that back as one of the first sports was amazing, because it led to all these people having a chance to watch it. And I think the recurring theme that we've had with chatting to everyone is that once you get an opportunity to watch a particular women's sport, you tend to convert people, because it's perhaps just that you haven't had that opportunity to see what it's like. And yet, if you love sport, you're probably going to like women's sport, because it's the same and just probably cooler. Especially with football, as we were talking tactics and how like it's much more of a passing game in the women's game, so you end up seeing a lot more skills on show, and it's because there's less diving as well. And so
I think it's a little bit similar with boxing, because obviously men naturally have more power, and that's not all men, which is a mistake some people make. They think that you can actually get an elite female tennis player, for example, and shove them in with just some guy who you just picked up down the chippy, and they'll probably beat the woman. Well, they won't. What I mean is like a trained male boxer. So my equivalent weight category as a male boxer would be a lot more explosive, stronger, more powerful, etc. So there's a lot more knockouts in men's boxing because they've got more power. So in women's, again, we tend to rely more on that, the nuances of it a little bit more sometimes, because not everybody has that same power. Some women do, but it's fewer. So that's it. And one of the really lovely things for me over the last few weeks has been seeing there was two young fighters, one of which was Amy Timlin, who's not far from me. She lives in the Northwest. A really young fighter, and who was fighting for the Commonwealth title, and it was just lovely because to see that belt in the ring, it was great, because of course when I boxed for it in Zimbabwe, there wasn't a belt afterwards because they didn't have one for women. And do you not know that story?
No.
Okay. When I went to Zimbabwe to fight for the title, and obviously won the title, and it was great because I became the first British woman to win it, which was felt really special. I think the thing was with it is that when I didn't get a belt, and when I got back, I spoke to the head of the Commonwealth Boxing Council and just said what a great experience it had been in Zimbabwe, because it was, but it was very disappointing not to get a belt. And he said that the manufacturers of the replica belt had ceased production. And so I said, "Oh, what's that got to do with me?" And he said, "Well, we do replica belts for women and real belts for men." So I said, "Well, why is that?" And he said, "Well, there's more money in men's boxing." I said, "I know, but surely if it meant me having no belt, I should have had the option, even if it meant paying for it with my own money, to have that belt." Because, see, I thought the worst bit would be straight after the fight in the ring, not having that belt, because that's the point of it, isn't it? Have that moment with you and your coach, and we'll never, ever have those photographs of that moment afterwards. I'm never, ever, ever going to have that. And that's a massive regret. But so I thought that'd be the worst bit, but it wasn't, because what happened was everyone back home, it had been live streamed back home and everyone had watched it, and they were so excited to see the belt. And I didn't have the heart to tell everyone I didn't have one, but I didn't know they were going to surprise me and my coach at the airport. And I got back to Manchester Airport, and there they all were. And it was just the most sickening, gutting feeling to not have that belt in that moment, and to feel like a second-class human being just because of my gender, really. And so I explained this to him, and I said, "How quickly can I have a real belt?" And he said, "Well, you can have one within the next couple of weeks, but they're quite expensive. So unless you've got a sugar daddy, you probably won't be able to get one." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Well, a sugar daddy." I said, "I work. I've worked throughout my whole football and boxing career. I've had to, because the money wasn't there when I was in football, and I'll be done with boxing before it comes into it for the likes of me." And I'm proud to have worked anyway. I've juggled those lives and made it happen. But anyway, that was what was said. And so I said, "Look, you shouldn't have said that. And I don't want this to happen to another female champion in the future. What can we do?" And they agreed to make the women's Commonwealth title belt, which I got in the December. And that was the belt that, obviously not that one, because there's one for each weight category, but it was there. And I thought, wow, that's great to see. So for me, there's signs of massive progress wherever I look in women's sport.
That's amazing. I think that really shows the kind of power of what you've been able to do for future athletes, I guess. And yeah, incredibly tough that you missed out on your moment, but you've been able to create moments for everyone else. So they now have that, as opposed to not
we're all trying to do, innit? That's exactly what we're all here for, is to make it better for the next generation. And also, while it really gets me right in there, I also have to think, well, do you know what? I was the right person for it to happen to, because I'll try and do something about it. So you've got to see it as a good thing, as a positive, if you can.
Yeah. Just sticking on boxing for a bit. What have you been? How do you work with younger girls now to get them into the sport? Because obviously there's perhaps more opportunities now. They can see more pipelines. Have you got kind of your own pipeline of athletes that you think are going to make it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll support anybody I can. I mean, there's a couple of young boxers whose parents have contacted me, and I've given them as much advice as I can, and one I've been training with, to help her, just give her the basics and stuff. I'm never going to be interested in developing elite athlete. Like, coaching isn't my forte, but I do love getting people into it who perhaps are trying it for the first time or are out of the comfort zone in the boxing environment, and I just love introducing them to it, whether they're going to compete or not, because it's actually a great sport for fitness and for building your confidence and for a release and loads of reasons. I do a women's boxing fitness class at my granddad's amateur gym, which is just great. We've been running it for years, and people love it. It's great that they can access that now. It was unheard of years ago. So there's that element. But in terms of the elite fighters, anything I can do to kind of support them and pass on the benefit of what helped me, because I definitely picked up a lot from fighters who, when I first went onto the GB squad, there was just little things that really helped. How they'd say, have this after a fight, or try that protein recovery, or do this with the ice after, or what. They seem like such tiny things, but added up, they can have a significant impact on how you recover from fights in a tournament setting, for example. And if you've never been to a tournament before, you haven't got a clue how to get your body through 4 fights in 6 days, like I did at the Europeans. And having those girls around me who'd been there, they said, what you need to do now is this. And I just followed their advice, and it accelerated my learning, because I didn't have the experience to draw from, but I could draw from theirs. So if I can do that, I absolutely will. Yeah,
building that network. That's awesome. So to go back to what we were talking about with Dina, your team of footballers are all doing amazing things now. Have you been following everyone's journey and kind of seeing what they're up to?
Absolutely. I mean, I do a bit of radio presenting now, and on BBC Radio Manchester, and I do the Sunday Sports Show. So now, what a great time, because we've got 2 top Manchester teams.
Yeah.
And the rivalry is building up now. We had a great derby at the weekend. We've got another one coming up this week. So it's time to be involved. So I don't know what it is about that generation. I think perhaps because we felt we were on the verge of something, and we were. We could see what was happening over in the US. Some of us had been over there to play, and we're on our way over there. We were seeing what was happening in Scandinavia. We were seeing what was happening in Germany and other countries. And we knew we could be part of that. We wanted to be part of that. We had the drive, we had the ambition, we had the love for the game. We just didn't have the opportunities, the funding, none of it. We had hand-me-down kits. I was taking time off work unpaid to go and represent my country. We had no nutrition advice, strength and conditioning, none of that. It started to come in now bit by bit, but there weren't the opportunities. And I think we wanted more, and we wanted better for us. And a lot of us didn't get it in time, but we want that for the next generation. And some did, the likes of Alex Scott got to play in these big tournaments, and Casey Stoney got professional contracts, and that's amazing. So we've all come through that system, and we know now what's possible. And I think we have taken it upon ourselves to carry that torch forward, and we all are aware of those of whom we stand on their shoulders, the Dick Kerrs ladies. And I played for Donny Bells. They were the first established women's team. I was so proud to play for them, and met many of the former players who who paved the way for us as we want to do now. And I just think we're really committed to that, and we're very aware, as many female athletes are, of this generation, because we really are in that generation where there literally weren't those opportunities. I mean, I was in that cohort as a little girl who had to have my hair cut short to play on the primary school team because I had to pretend to be a boy, as did Rachel Yankee and many of the others that we've heard talk about those experiences. And yet, within our lifetime, we've represented our countries, we've played abroad, so we've seen what can happen when opportunities are given, and we can't settle with that. We want to bring the next generation on and make it even better for them.
I think I've been just so impressed by the professionalization of contracts, and just was like, it's almost like it suddenly started accelerating and then it's just gone. And just the opportunities for players to make a living out of it and not have to work 2 or 3 jobs on the side, and to be able to like, I think it's a really exciting moment when we saw the like Lucy Bronze contract, and the fact that you're a professional player, you can like do this full time and put the effort in, and know that then you're going to see these amazing like world-class performances, like a bicycle kick in the 83rd minute of the semi-final in the World Cup. Like, that comes from a professionalized game. So it's been amazing to watch the pace of change. Important,
because when we talk about equal pay, that there's only one aspect of the money that's through the equal pay. That's what goes in your pocket, and we're not just talking about that. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily. I mean, it'd be great for those individual players to have absolute loads of money in the pockets. Of course, it would, but it doesn't actually grow the game. It doesn't create opportunities on the whole. What we're talking about when we talk about equal investment is not just giving players money in the pocket. You're talking about having that infrastructure around them, great facilities, the best nutrition advice, the best strength and conditioning facilities and coaches, the best coaches, and traveling in a way that you're not cramped up on a bus for 20 hours on the way to play a game or compete in a boxing tournament or whatever it might be. Kit that fits you and that's appropriate for you and that's made for you. So when you start looking at that, that's before you even talk about corporate investment, marketing, broadcasting deals, and all of that. That's what really grows any game. So it's more than just what goes in players' pockets.
Totally. And one of the things we've been talking about with the rugby managers and cricket is also around sponsors and the impact that they've had on the game. How have sponsorship changed boxing? And do you think that's going to change even further over the next few years?
Yeah, I definitely think it will. And if we take football as the example, again, that stretch, that spectrum of my generation is, as a 16-year-old, when I worked in the factory where I worked and I got my first England call up, it was just phenomenal. You get an email now, I imagine then you used to get a letter, like a real letter in the post. And it came and it had like obviously the 3 lions on the crest. And it was just, I'm sure Dina was the same. I was just out of my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is it, And I went to my boss and said, I need a week off, but there's nothing available on the rota. And he said, what do you need a week off for? And I gave him this letter and I was like so excited. I was almost floating and I was like waiting and didn't really say anything. And he just kind of looked at me and he said, you want a week off to play for a women's football team? And I said, well, it's the England women's football team. And he made all these jokes and honestly, and I said, can I just take it unpaid? It means a lot to me. Yeah, if you must. And I walked out of the office feeling so small and like such an idiot for thinking it was a big deal, not to play for the England football team, but the women's England football team. And I realised then there was a big difference in the minds of a lot of people. And I kind of absorbed that and took that on to think it wasn't the same thing. It wasn't the real England football team. And I didn't even tell any of my colleagues that I was going. I didn't tell anyone. I felt, silly for thinking it was such a big deal. And then we skip ahead 20 odd years and look at the World Cup, massive corporations falling over themselves to associate themselves with our team and individual players. And that for me felt quite emotional, really, in amongst it all. That bit was quite a personal thing for me because I thought, wow, I actually worked in that place and that's how I was treated. And yet here's companies who've nothing to do with those players wanting to get on board with it. And I think that's part of what I want to get across to young people now, is that, you know, we can't change every person who's like that boss of mine sat behind that desk, but we could try and make sure that people don't come out of interactions like that feeling small, whether that's whatever it is, race, disability, gender, class, whatever it might be, that they can still feel proud of who they are and what they do. And a lot of, you know, building girls and boys up is unlearning the things we've been taught about women in sport, because a lot of it is not true. It's not true at all.
I think there's been so many misconceptions, and big events like Women's World Cup last year have really changed a lot of mindsets. I had such a funny conversation with a Manchester United supporter last year. It was like, oh no, I don't watch the women's game. And I was like, all right. And he's like, but I'm a Man U supporter, so I'll probably just watch the Man U women's games. And I was like, all right, okay. And did you watch the World Cup? Oh yeah, I watched a couple of the England games. And so you just, there is this amazing kind of, I think once people get over the hurdle that watching women's sport, there's so much love there, and you can be proud of supporting a team regardless of whether it's women's or men's. If it's your team, it's your team. And let's help them get through that.
Yeah, it takes a long time to you know, change. It's just not easy at all. Whether that's changing the way that the game's run at governance level, whether it's changing decisions that are made, changing the views of key influencers and decision makers, or changing societal perceptions. And it can be very, very tough to do that. It's not an easy pathway, is it? It's up, it's down, it's ugly, it's rocky terrain, but it's worth it. And those of us that believe in it and are committed to it will be prepared for whatever comes along that path to keep treading on that direction, because it's worth it ultimately. But it isn't easy. It really isn't easy. It's tough. And, you know, the path to change is slow. And, you know, it generally starts with ridicule, which women's football was at one time. And really back in the past, it was only ridicule. That was it. And then it goes to discussion and then acceptance. That's the general pattern of any societal change. And I think it's different sports are at different places. You look at something like athletics, that's all the way to acceptance. Tennis, I would largely say, is at the level of acceptance. Things like football, boxing, rugby for females, slightly different, because it's been so male dominated. We're still sometimes between discussion and ridicule with some people, but there's a lot more people at the acceptance level now than ever before.
No, it makes a massive difference. So Stacey, final question for you: How are you staying fit at the moment? What are on your fitness goals, and what are you working on?
I can use my granddad's gym because he's got, you know, the amateur gym that I can still go in by myself if I need to. So that's pretty good, and it's obviously safe. But I've got a lot more into cycling the last couple of years because my knees are badly damaged from years of football. So running's not possible for me anymore, sadly, and I really do miss it. But so I've got a lot more into cycling.
Yeah.
And also, during the first lockdown, I started doing a lot of outdoor swimming, which is not something I thought I'd ever get into. I did it abroad, but never here. It's never something I can think of doing here, probably because it's so bloody cold. But I got into it, and me and my boyfriend have done quite a few now, and actually gone to places where we've read about them being some really good, you know, spots to do it, if you like, and I've absolutely loved it. So I think it's kind of given me an opportunity to try different things, which I think is really healthy for your mind and your body to do different stuff. And then a lot of the boxing sessions that we did in the gym have now gone online. So I'm doing 3 a week for all the women, and there's a couple of men, but mostly women who come to those sessions. And that's been a great thing to keep them sort of, you know, positively engaged and keeping up with their fitness routine. And also it just keeps everyone together. Some people are a lot more isolated than others because of the circumstances, and exercise and fitness is a good way because we try and make it fun. We had a Halloween theme the other week. We've got a disco theme tomorrow. So we've got disco music and stuff. So, you know, it's about having a positive impact wherever you can, I think.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for chatting. It's been such a pleasure to learn more about your mindset, learn more about boxing as well. And I think the journey that you've been on from football to boxing, and it's, yeah, I think part of the reason we set up Equal Playing Field was to push for some of these changes, and we know it's not easy, and you face a lot of I guess backlash in some ways for changing the status quo, but it's been so great. One of the best things has been connecting with people like you who are pushing the boundaries and kind of supporting each other to do it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. It's honestly a privilege to be part of it, and I'm really excited about being involved in other ways in the future, and because I fully support the mission and the cause. 100% believe in it, and it runs in my veins, really. So yeah, I'm really pleased that you're doing what you're doing, and happy to support it. And thanks to everyone that's been involved as guests or donators, or we've just followed it today. I think it's fantastic. So thanks so much, and obviously good luck to Dina.
We'll check in and see what she's up to.
Yeah, I can't wait to keep following what she's up to. Yeah,
she's great. Well, thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thanks very much. See you later. Bye.
See you. Bye. Awesome. All right, I'm going to just check in on Dina, and we'll just see what how she's doing. Let's see whether we've got. She's definitely looks like 4,700, which is pretty epic. When we were speaking to her before, she was saying that she's hurting a bit. So yeah, she's got, I think it's 10.5 hours to go. So that'll be good. My next guest is brilliant, the brilliant Dawn Scott, who is hello,
Laura,
women's fitness coach, and it's been a while since we've chatted. And I mean, you've done some cool things in between. Got a cheeky World Cup.
I think probably the last time we chatted was that impromptu stop I took in Melbourne when I was literally on a 2-3 hour layover. I took a cab and we had breakfast that day. So I don't even know what year that was, if I'm honest. How are you?
Yeah, and how is your PhD going?
It's going. I've kind of got probably one more data set that I just need to write up, and then hopefully I can. Well, one more paper to write up, then the final thesis to write up. So I say it's
amazing. Who else does like a lot of coaching and all of this, and does a PhD as well? Pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, you look at the literature, the research. I think like every time we look at the equality piece, and there's such a gap on the data on women in sport anyway, but like women's football. So I think that was a driver for a long time. So I think just to add a little bit to that kind of discrepancy in the data has been a big driver for my sins. But yeah, it just means that right now my floor is covered in research papers, and any second I get, I feel like I should be reading a research paper. I shouldn't be allowed to enjoy any downtime. But yeah, it's getting there. It's good.
Oh, it's cool. I went down a research wormhole recently because we're in a similar way to you, like getting data for looking at the outsoles, especially for women's football boots. And there's some literature on it, but there's not enough. And so we've been working with a lot of the researchers to start to fill in those gaps, because you can just you could have such a positive impact on the game just by knowing yes or no to certain questions. So I had too many tabs open the other day, and sort of got to close some tabs down.
Oh, no, me too. If anybody was ever to look on my computer, they'd be like, what on earth is that crazy woman doing?
Yeah, exactly. Too much. So many things to talk to you about. I guess one of the cool thing, well, first of all, your new job, and less new now, and a bit of a random year to begin begin a new job. How has it been, and how's it been during kind of all the Corona stuff, and kind of still being able to play some international matches and things like that?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I guess in 2 weeks it'll be my first year anniversary in the job, which is kind of crazy that it's been that long. I mean, I've done one camp and then we had the She Believes tournament in the US. So we played, I mean, bizarrely at the time, like we were in America playing in the She Believes tournament. We played in Florida, New York, and then Texas. And each venue, there started to be this kind of rumblings, murmurings about the coronavirus. But our kind of crisis management team were like, oh no, like it's, you know, because at that time it wasn't kind of the kind of size it is now, but they were like, you know, we're fine. And then when we landed back in England, I think that was probably the first time any of us were like, oh my goodness, like this is a big thing and we're about to probably enter this lockdown period. So then literally I landed back from the first tournament. And I was telling somebody the other day, I was actually sat in Heathrow waiting for a flight back up to Newcastle, which is where I'm based. And I was just reading like bits of the news and I was like, this sounds like we're going to go into a lockdown. So immediately text all the players a list of equipment that they should go on Amazon right there and then and buy, like a kettlebell, a med ball, whatever. Yeah. Just I was like, this lockdown is coming. And yeah, like from that Monday, we then went into that first lockdown period. And I bought myself, like in the back garden now, I've got like an Olympic bar, I've got, you know, kettlebells, med ball and everything. So then the next, 6 months, we were in kind of the kind of lockdown period and not in the office. So that time was probably spent alongside kind of the coaches doing a bit of a deep dive into some of the physical data from the players from that She Believes tournament, and then really kind of connecting with the clubs after that tournament, because first and foremost, the clubs throughout that whole lockdown were driving the programs for the players. So it was more actually getting to know the clubs and familiarize with them. Like in the January and part of February, I'd done some club visits, but obviously not many. And then, yeah, kind of the lockdown happened. So it was kind of setting up, I feel like right now it's like 9 till 5, 6 teams calls or Zoom meetings. So it was kind of calls with clubs. And then it was like looping in the players and giving them some of the data feedback, then looping back in with the club and setting a plan. And then there was a few players who came back from some of the teams in Europe and from the college. And so for those players, I was programming for them for the kind of lockdown period. And then we had a camp in September. So in the FIFA window for that camp, were we supposed to play a game? I can't remember, you know, in that September camp, we had 2 house matches. And then for October, we were due to travel to Germany and play a match. But we just had a situation where one of the staff members tested positive for the virus. Everybody else was negative and fine. But then there was just this challenge and danger that if we'd have traveled to Germany and somebody else had tested positive, they might have had to stay out there for 14 days. So decision was made to cancel the match, and then fast forward to the window coming up, we meet up again on Saturday and we were due to play Norway, but they've made the decision from kind of political level that they won't travel. So yeah, but you know, like we've got a good program schedule. We've got 2 in-house matches. We've got some culture leadership sessions for the players. You know, kind of you come in and you're training with, you know, the best players in the country. So it's still, you know, it's still going to be a good camp and a, you know, obviously a good contact time with the players.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you had to adapt quite rapidly to the situation. So then, yeah, perhaps not getting the same face-to-face time. And in some ways, how we were training for Killy, where you're sort of telling people what to do remotely in all the parts of the world, and you have to hope that everyone's doing it so that then when they come together, they've got those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think when you're the national team, like, you know, you always have to kind of deal with that because you're always, you know, on the front end of a camp, you're dealing with players coming in from 8, 9, 10 different clubs. So you then have to adapt, you know, for individual players, you have to adapt day to day and whatever. And, you know, then on the back end, when you send them back to their clubs, they're going back to different environments. So, yeah, I think I've always kind of been used to that kind of adaptability because I think you have to in terms of the nature of kind of what you do. But it's fun. And I think in some ways, sometimes, like when you're on a call like this, you probably have to concentrate a bit more. Like, I think sometimes, like when you're in a meeting or in a bigger room, like sometimes I find myself kind of floating in and out. Whereas I feel like on these calls, especially when it's 1-to-1, you can't have those moments. You have to be kind of like on it and engaged for the whole time. So, you know, I don't feel like I've not made connections with players, because I think I've, you know, like, whether it is a message, whether it's on here, like, we've still kept in touch the whole time, and, you know, even continue to build relationships with clubs, and, you know, like, share data, share information, case conference players. So there's still been a lot of that going on in the background, and the clubs have done some really good work with the players. Like, you know, I know a lot of clubs have kind of run yoga sessions online, or done cookery sessions online, or like at last camp, because again, you know, we've got some real strict COVID kind of policies, procedures of what we can and can't do. And one is just like meeting times with players. So last camp, the chef kind of did some demonstrations of different smoothies for, you know, recovery, or like phase of menstrual cycle or whatever. So again, you know, you just kind of like think out the box a little bit with some of what you can do, and, you know, still just help to educate and develop the players.
I think you touched on it just there, but that's one of the kind of game-changing bits of research over the last few years is around the menstrual cycle, and work Dr. Georgie's been doing on the with fitter women and things like that. I think, I don't know, it seems like it's opened up this whole area of research where suddenly everyone's realized that you can work with cycles as opposed to against it, to really kind of get the best performance for the athletes.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of groups in the UK who've done a couple of like meta-analysis kind of studies as well recently. So I think that now is the groundwork for, okay, you know, this is the research that's been done, this is what needs to be done. And I think it's going to be now a platform for people to, you know, like, more see the benefit, and, like you say, see that you can work with the cycle, because, you know, as females, we're going to get this every 28 days, every 35 days. So, you know, I think there's strategies you can employ that will reduce the symptoms and the symptoms that players have. And a menstrual cycle should never stop a player from taking part in training or performing, or, you know, scoring the winning goal in a World Cup final. It's how can we minimize how bad their symptoms might be so that they then recover better, perform optimally, that kind of thing. But yeah, there is a massive gap in the literature, and I think that probably is an area that will get increasing kind of attention, rightly so, and, you know, also make it a subject that players are comfortable talking about, and break down that taboo of, oh my goodness, like, let's not talk about that, secret squirrels kind of thing. So, and also I think, like, for me, for many years, I was like, you obviously knew about the menstrual cycle because you had them yourself, and I knew about symptoms, and, you know, kind of how either my mood state, or I feel more bloated or more tired in the 4 or 5 days before a cycle. So you kind of knew that, but I was always, you're working with 20, 25 players on a daily basis. How on earth can I do anything kind of around it? And, you know, how can you work with individual players? So I think that was where, like, the tool that Georgie has developed, the Fit Our Woman, was something that was really beneficial to help educate the players, and then just to help monitor that more effectively. So yeah, I think it will be an area that gets an increasing amount of attention as well.
I think what's interesting is I've seen it have kind of repercussions in the wider world, like people that are not kind of women's football world have been talking about this as well, and it's opened up a lot of conversations, even beyond sport, I guess.
No, definitely, and kind of the male, you know, we've obviously got a male head coach, and he's you know, he's not shy to kind of mention it and speak about it, and I think that is good, and I feel like that makes players feel they're in a safe space where they can openly talk about it, and shouldn't not, because, you know, sometimes players are, I think on the women's side, sometimes an environment where it's predominantly male staff, and I think that can be hard. But, you know, as much as we talk about, say, the elite end, like, I always think about the players who maybe don't get support, or in countries where it's frowned upon to talk about it. Again, how can we widen that education and awareness so that, you know, we break down those barriers of girls, young girls in countries where it is forbidden to talk about it, or, you know, don't have
where
that.
It's a real hindrance to even
absolutely,
let alone sport and anything else.
Definitely.
One of the other things your name has come up in a lot of different things recently, a lot of people I've talked to, but one of the things I've been hearing a lot about recently is actually how the whole pipeline of players is starting to kind of closing the gap between the super elite and what those players are getting, and then kind of some of the other players in the clubs who are perhaps not at the top level yet, but they're still getting more access to data and more access to fitness programs and things like that. I think that's been super cool to kind of hear about some of the way the elite program is joining with the clubs to make sure that you get that crossover.
Yeah, I think the FA have done a very good job, and obviously in the last couple of weeks they just released their new strategy for girls and women's football, and for sure they definitely talk about the whole pathway and the future generation. And I think it was by 2024 that every girl in school gets the opportunity to play football. I think back to when I was growing up and you didn't play in school. It was literally hockey or netball. That was it. And even, you get home from school and I thought nothing of going out in the street and playing football with the boys till dark at night. And again, I don't think at that time it resonated that the boys maybe could go off and play for a club, and we couldn't go and play for clubs because they just didn't exist. And then when I was, I think 12, 13, my mum called the radio show The Night Owls and was like, I've got a daughter who is just fanatic of football. I used to go to Newcastle games with my dad and stuff. And she's like, my mum's like, is there any teams anywhere? Because she really wants to play for a team. And I lived in Washington and there was a team in Whitley Bay. So that time kind of parents had just divorced and we didn't have a car. And so it was a bus, a metro, and then another bus to get there. And I'm 13, 14 years old and it would take 90 minutes to get there. You'd train for 90 minutes. And I remember I used to love it. And then you'd come back 90 minutes, but I wasn't getting home till 11:30 at night. And then on a weekend, it was a full day because Whitley Bay would play matches in Sheffield or Manchester or, because there was no other teams. Yeah. So then it would be a full day on a Sunday. And, also I was 13, 14 and respectfully kind of people at the club were all much older. And so again, it got to the stage where it was hard with the travel. I wasn't fully enjoying the matches on the Sunday. I loved the training. It was weird. I loved the training, but I didn't really enjoy the matches. So in the end, it was
very
just
prescient for your life there.
Say again?
Really enjoying the training. That's very perhaps leading you down the path of your future career.
Yeah. And so then it was I didn't play again really until I went to university. Again, just playing in that kind of setting where I guess it was more organised sport and there was the opportunity to play. So I think even the FA's approach now of making sure every girl in school gets a chance to play, increasing the participation numbers. Obviously one of their overarching aims is for an England women's team to win by 2023. So, obviously we've got 3 big years, 3 major tournaments, but also kind of looking at the pathway in terms of support there and looking at the WSL, wanting to make the WSL the best women's league in the world. So, yeah, I think the FA do a great job of trying to do that and trying to support the whole pathway grassroots, not just the elite level.
Yeah, I think we were talking before about the Manchester derby that was at the weekend and then the one coming out. I mean, it's incredible. You look at the talent that's we just nicked everyone from Australia and the US. And then just creating these amazing games. Just it's such a showcase of the sport for sure.
Yeah. It's just a shame. I mean, obviously it's the global situation. It's just such a shame now. I was fortunate to be able to go to that Manchester game at the weekend, but that we can't have fans in. I could totally see that match having been played at the City Stadium or at Old Trafford and it being,
it'd be massive.
Proud, yeah. And I just hope at some point before the end of the season we can get fans in so fans can appreciate, the level of football that is being played by, yes, those international players, but also our own English players. We've got some very good English players out there doing some amazing things. So
yeah, really incredible. I think it's been fascinating though. Yes, the live experience, we're all missing the live experience, but having the ability to put the matches front and center, it's kind of attracted a new audience. People have been watching it. It's really talked about now, which is kind of really exciting to see. I guess it's given people that perhaps wouldn't have watched, but because they're at home, an opportunity to watch.
Yeah, but also I think, like, I remember Crystal Dunn, who the American player who played at Chelsea maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was. And recently somebody asked her about, I think maybe he's the FA player and being able to watch matches, or there was an interview somewhere and she just said, like, it's night and day now, the exposure of the league and the broadcast of the league compared to even just 3 or 4 years ago. So again, I think it's credit to, you know, the broadcast, the communications people who've gone out and done those deals. And again, I seen Kelly Simmons's tweet at the weekend of the Manchester Derby, where it was on live in 10, 12 countries around the world. And, you know, in the US, like NBC Sports pay to have those games streamed, not streamed, broadcast live. So, you know, I just think that is amazing that, again, there's more opportunity to watch women's football, watch women's sport, not even just women's football. And I think, like you say at the minute, because of the stage we're at in terms of lockdown, I think more people are tuning in because they want to see sport because they can't go live. So, you know, you want to hope that it continues and it's not just a short-term thing. I think the challenge is making sure it does continue and we don't lose kind of those people who have tuned in now.
Yeah, definitely, to keep the fans for sure.
How's our girl doing? She smashed it, didn't she, after 3 hours, was it?
I don't, well, so I think after 4 hours she was at 700, and then I mean now she's on something like 4,700. We'll hopefully get a chance to speak with her shortly. I know I'm just looking at the live stream and she's got a bit taking a break, I think, at the moment, kind of the 10 minutes before the hour and then keep going again. She is doing really well. I was going to ask you actually about penalties and how do you train players for those big moments?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny, isn't it? I was actually reading an article the other day because, as well as a PhD, I'm doing a part-time master's in sports directorship.
Obviously, of course you are.
Oh, yeah. So one of the modules at the minute is on leadership, and there was an article that was passed around and suggested we read. And part of the article was about being prepared for big moments, and it spoke a little bit about penalties. And there was a little kind of section that Gareth Southgate had an input in, and obviously in Euro 2006, I think, when Germany beat England in the semi-finals of the Euros on penalties, he obviously missed that penalty, and he said that before the penalty, he just wanted to get it out of the way, so he did it as quick as he could. And actually research shows that the longer you take to set up and take the penalty, the more successful. I can't remember the time period, 10 or 15 seconds, maybe something like that. And those people, like athletes, players who take longer time to do it are actually more successful. So I think that's part of it. Can you ever train them? I mean, again, in the 2011 World Cup with the US, I was part of, like, we had 2 penalty shootouts, one in the quarterfinal game against Brazil, where we equalised late into the game and then we won the penalty shootout. And then we had another one in the World Cup final where Japan equalised in the last minute of extra time and then we lost penalties. So I also feel like there's that momentum piece of, you know, like the game where we scored late, we had the momentum. Like, I remember coming into the huddle and the players were like, buzzing, we've got this, like, we're going to win this. And we did. And then you look at the body language of the players on both instances, and it was like the absolute reverse. So I think that's one big thing. I think the other piece is that what is the player's routine for taking the penalty? The one thing that the US did in the lead up to the World Cup last year was, because I think you can never fully practice the penalty strategy because the crowd, like everything that goes into it. But what we did, like, it was the goalkeeper coach, Graham Abel, who's English himself, like, he basically got crowd noise. I think it was Liverpool fans. But so then we would practice in an empty stadium, but with this crowd noise booming out of the loudspeaker to try and simulate a crowd. and then we'd have the players kind of walk from the halfway line and go through the routine. So I think some of it is momentum generally of the game. I think some of it is players having an individual routine, and then the third one I think is the practicing it, rehearsing it, and just being comfortable that it becomes automatic and
like muscle memory.
Yeah, nothing is going to affect you in the moment doing it. But I just don't think you can ever fully prepare. I think you can practice, but I don't think you can ever fully prepare. But
For those big moments.
to do over 4,000 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've got the lady herself and someone who's having much practice today.
Oh, I'm in the
Dina.
Dini, how are you doing?
I'm sorry.
I mean, you're just crazy, man.
Oh, mate, I don't know what's going on right now, but
I think I watched.
Going, Dawny.
I think I watched you like 4 hours in, and like you just put the ball down, boom, like ball down, one step, boom, like you just did like 10 in a row, and I'm just like, I don't think I could ever hit one with as much precision and power, and you just did 10 in a row.
Me, they're not like that now. They're literally like trickling into the goalie, or like I'm trying to place them in the corners as much as I can, just because I've got no power. But
you've only got 10 hours to go, Dee.
Yeah, we're still going.
Yeah,
sorry.
10 hours. You can do
You've
it.
only got 10 hours to go.
Just another 10 hours, Dawny. Just another 10 hours. All right.
How many?
Kari.
How many are you up to?
Kari Sweat is my way forward.
Wow.
I'm on 4,900 right now.
Wow.
So
okay.
I'm thinking now.
10,000?
Down, to be honest, I can't. No, please, Laura, don't start putting things like that in my mind.
8,000.
I want to get over. I want to get to 6,000.
Yeah.
I'm going to see how it goes. I might put a number on the hour and just say I'll do 200 shots and then get a bit more rest through the night.
Yeah, do that.
I keep saying that, and then I keep pumping out. I've been saying that for the last 3 hours. I keep pumping out like 450 and 400, and so I don't know. I'm gonna see, but I've been up since 4 a.m. So I'm like, this is like what is going on here? What is going on? But I'm keeping going, and I'll slow down a bit. But 6,000 is what I really want to get to.
Set yourself 300 an hour. That's a compromise between your 100 and your 400.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. All right.
Yeah.
I'm on that. I'll try.
Be smart. You've got this.
The coach said.
I've got this. Thank you, guys.
300.
I appreciate your support.
Even though you're on the other team. Good luck. Keep going, girl. You're the best.
Thanks a lot. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Good luck, mate.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, amazing. What a legend. What a legend.
Yeah. I can't believe you've just put 8,000 in her head.
She can do it though. She's at 5,000 already. She like we were calculating her rate of penalties beforehand, and she already like smashed through it. So I reckon she'll get a second wind at the like last few hours. So
what was the previous record?
So only 1,111
in 24 hours.
Yeah, and then someone did it about a month ago and got 2,075, and Dina has just smashed it through the roof.
It's a casual one step strike. That's what
it is. You'll have to after this. I'll give her some of the tips. So when you're doing it for real, Dina, you got 10 to 15 seconds placing it and doing it.
Yeah,
but
no,
she's a real inspiration thing for us.
Yeah.
Looking at that effort. Dawn, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you. I'm gonna have to head off now so that the other streams can come on. But
brilliant.
Well, good to see you. You too.
Yeah, you've been amazing, and then let's catch up properly soon.
Yeah, good luck with your studies, and excited for all that silverware you're going to be bringing back to England. So keep it going.
We'll see. Thank you, Laura. Good to see you. See you soon.
Yeah,
bye,
take care, mate. Bye.
Bye.